Welcome, listeners. It's me, Joe Dixon. I'm one of the regular hosts of the podcast you are listening to. George, the man I normally do the show with, has escaped from the basement in which I keep him. Perhaps I overdid it with he puts the lotion in the basket or he gets the hose again. But his skin was very, very dry. He really needed that lotion. Anyway, I've been laying out pizza rolls and glasses of unsweetened iced tea on my stoop. He loves some pizza rolls and iced tea. Eventually, he'll get hungry and come back. They all do. They all come back eventually. But the show must go on, so please join me and my special guest host as we take a look at the 1969 Western classic, The Wild Bunch. Thank you. Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old movies and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm Kraig Beaudoin, sitting in for George Ramaka, and today we're discussing The Wild Bunch from 1969, and some historical context. But first, podcasty stuff. You can reach Does This Still Work at dtswpod@gmail.com on Facebook, Letterboxd, and CounterSocial, or their YouTube channel. Please tell your friends about the show and leave a 5-star rating everywhere. You can pick what they watch and an extra per episode content by funding the pod on Patreon for as little as $1 per month at patreon.com/dtswpod. And one more thing. I am the guest host. Joe, what did you do with George?
Nothing. He's out of town on a job thing. He'll be back next episode. I should say you and I are friends. I met you through stand-up. And many months ago, I asked you if you would like to be a regular guest host when me or George was out. And you said, sure. Is there anything you want to tell the audience about yourself?
Just that I have known you for many years. I respect you for your comedy and your film knowledge, etc. That being said, I am truly worried about what you have done with George.
He's fine. He's fine. He'll be all right. Anyway, the last time I saw you, actually was at your wedding.
That is correct.
You were getting married.
Yes. Speaking of a wild bunch, that was a very, very fun night. And things are going extremely well, and I am happily married.
That's so sweet. And before we started, we were talking a bit, and you were looking for your headphones. You said, I got to find my wife's headphones. I'm like, oh, look at this. He's already referred as the wife. Whoa.
That's correct. She has, since we've been married, she has accidentally referred to me as her boyfriend at one point, which was truly a step down, right? I didn't even get the fiance treatment. I half expected her to introduce me as a work colleague. So
that's how you went and met, right? You guys met through work.
That's correct. Yes. We are an HR nightmare turned into a success story.
Maybe that's my mistake. I need to date people at work. That's why I can't date anybody.
Anyway, Joe, take us back to 1969.
Indeed, I will. This movie is full of crude men, so why not take a look at the behavior of two crude dudes from 1969 America? I got this story out of the Tallahassee Democrat. There are two different dudes I'm going to be talking about. This is the first one. My friend Kraig, could you read the headline, please?
Whose side is O'Neill on anyway?
In 1969, a guy named James J. O'Neill was reported in this publication as punching a cop in the face, kicking another, and scuffling with a third. He is fined $340, which in today's money would be over $2,000. This all after police tried to arrest him for public intoxication. The punchline? Mr. O'Neill was president of North Suburban Glenview Support Your Police Committee. Kraig, the article doesn't say, but how drunk do you think this guy must have been?
On a scale of Deke to Pike, I'm guessing closer to Pike.
You're very pikey drunky. Have you ever gotten that drunk where you're like fighting cops?
No, but I've spent a lot of time in the alcohol industry in another life, and I have seen people extremely drunk. The drunkest I've ever seen anyone was at a pig fest, and a gentleman got so drunk that he took the head of the pig with its skin body and put it on his head and ran around in the rain with it.
Oh, Jesus.
So I think that's very close to punching a cop kind of drunk.
Oh, it's a pig, certainly. What's a pig fest?
It's one of those things where you roast a whole hog for many hours and have a bunch of drunk people come by and enjoy.
Now, was this like something you did in Maine, where you're from, or?
Believe it or not, this was in Brooklyn, New York. So, of course, Brooklyn. Yeah, so this was at my stint at the Brooklyn Brewery.
Oh, okay. And someone got a whole pig and put it on one of those skewers?
No, I mean, we would have folks from, professionals from North Carolina come up and smoke these whole hogs the night before. And it was an all-you-can-drink kind of deal. Live music. It was very, very fun, but inevitably people got very drunk.
Oh, sure. Why wouldn't they? Okay. On a heavier note, in 1969, America was still in Vietnam, and at the same time this film was released, Americans found out about the My Lai massacre. I found this story in Petoskey News Review, which was a paper out of Michigan. Give me the headline, please, Craig.
Army orders full probe on My Lai massacre.
I like how massacre is in quotes. 109 civilians were killed, one as young as 2 years old. That sounds very massacre to me. Also, the Army tried to cover it up. I don't know if listeners know this or not, but generally speaking, the military doesn't make it a point to whitewash treating non-combatants to a nice dinner. If they're covering it up, it's probably bad. 26-year-old Lieutenant William Calley was court-martialed on murder charges for being leader of the platoon that mowed these people down. I looked this guy up to find out what happened, and he was convicted. He is a war criminal. He was found guilty of 22 of the deaths and got life imprisonment, but that got busted down to 20 years, then 10 years, until President Nixon commuted his sentence to 3 years of house arrest. House arrest for a murder conviction. Good job, Dick. I'm going to quote from Wikipedia. Private First Class Paul David Medeo, having been granted immunity, was ordered by Judge Reed W. Kennedy to testify or face contempt of court charges. Medeo thus took the stand and recounted that as he stood over some 30 villagers whom he, along with Private Dennis Conti, had gathered at a defoliated area at a hamlet's southern tip. He was approached by Calley and told, regarding the civilians, you know what to do with them. Medeo took that as orders to keep watch over them. Calley, however, returned 10 minutes later and became enraged by the fact that the villagers were still alive. After telling Medeo that he had wanted them dead, Calley backed up 20 feet, opened fire on them himself, and ordered Medeo to join in, which he did. Medeo then proceeded to round up more villagers to be massacred. Conti's testimony corroborated that given by Medeo and laid the blame on Calley not only for the initiation of the massacre, but also for the participation in it by his subordinates. Another witness, Leonard Gonzalez, told of finding 7 women, all naked, all dead, killed by several M79 grenade launch rounds. End quote. Do you know anything about the My Lai massacre there, Craig?
No, I had never heard of it before. But I can say, if history has taught us anything, it's the whole just following orders excuse does not work.
Does not work. No, definitely not. Can you believe the guy got a house arrest for these crimes?
It's crazy. Although, from Nixon...
Not surprising?
Not surprising, yeah. Also, can I just point out the defoliated area at the Hamlet's southern tip sounds like a Wes Anderson directed porno.
Oh, that's I would never have thought Wes Anderson's name would be dragged into this. So congratulations for that. that is a huge stretch, man. I applaud you bringing Wes Anderson into a Sam Peckinpah movie review.
Yeah.
Wow.
What can I say?
That is some skill. Okay, Craig, tell us about The Wild Bunch.
All right, so first, the film summary stuff. The Wild Bunch was directed by Sam Peckinpah, as you mentioned, and it was also written by Sam Peckinpah and Wallen Green. I've seen a few movies by Peckinpah, Straw Dogs and The Getaway, and for Wallen, I did see The Brinks Job many years ago.
Wallen Green, I don't know. Peckinpah, I only know from the movies Straw Dogs and this one. We've never seen Straw Dogs for this podcast, but I have seen it on my own. And did you see both the remake or did you just see the original?
I've seen both. It's tough because I haven't seen the original in quite some time. And so I don't know how true, from memory, I don't know how true it is to the remake. But I enjoyed both of them. So
I didn't see the remake, so I have no idea how they did it there. But I do remember the original's rape scene in that movie. And I personally, I get the impression that Peckinpah was getting off on this.
Yeah, it's always weird during that time frame too to see sort of rape portrayed on screen, and because it is wild how it kind of showcases itself. In fact, even in this film, there are some glimpses of rape. One of the characters was even accused of rape according to his wanted poster. So, but it's always off-putting, especially in these older films, because there never seems to be sort of any, how do I put it? There are no comeuppance, right? There's no no one pays the price for rape back in these older films. It seems not the characters nor the directors or writers who are writing about it.
And also, for me anyway, at least in terms of Straw Dogs, there's sort of an implication that she's enjoying it.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember, but there's sort of like she doesn't completely hate it. And then some other guy comes over and that's the one she hates, but the first guy she was good with. I mean, I don't know. It was. Anyway, this isn't about Straw Dogs. I thought,
no, this is about the Wild Bunch. And so I mean, it did, and this is a fairly decent film. It garnered some awards back in the day. It was nominated for 2 Oscars: Best Original Screenplay and Best Original Score. IMDb has this listed as an aging group of outlaws that are looking for one last big score as the traditional American West is disappearing around them. And I will say, with all heist films, I don't know what it is about this. There's always one last score. It's never a film where these guys are just starting out, right? This is the last time I'm doing it, and I'm filming it this time.
Yes, but to be fair, this is 1969, so they probably originated it.
Well, that's true too. I can't hate on it too much, right? So there's another 40 or 50 years of them doing this in film. So Amazon has this as in the dying days of the Old West, a group of aging outlaws seeks a final score in the world that has left them behind, right? So, I mean, it is pretty typical what this film is about. It's that old Western where these guys are just trying to rob one last victim so that they can ride off into the sunset and never have to do anything ever again.
I will give the film this. Not only though, I think they're the first to do the whole I'm too old for the shit sort of thing, but also they are really old.
Yes.
Like, usually in these pictures, they're like, oh, I'm so tired of this, and then the guys looking like 20, 30 years younger than they're actually playing. These guys really look like, oh, I've been through a lot. I need a rest.
Well, how much of that too is like it's in color, so I'm sure that these guys were probably in their peak 15 years before this film was made, and just because it's in Technicolor doesn't mean it looks fantastic.
Well, also, guys like William Holden and Ernest Borgnine, from my understanding, and you may have some background on this, heavy drinkers, so they really did look like they've been through a lot. and to be fair, they were World War II generation, so they really had been through a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's the best way to describe the Wild Bunch, is a cautionary tale for drinking. And so let's get into it. Let's get into the Wild Bunch. The film opens with an introduction to most of the film's characters. We see a gang dressed as military officers as they march on horseback to the center of a sleepy western town, all while the most unenthusiastic temperance movement members are hosting their meeting, and a group of psychopathic children are torturing a scorpion and some fire ants with some fire for no reason. I assume it was a metaphor for something, or the director just really hates ants.
Listen, it's 1913. All they have is radio. The kids need some other entertainment, for God's sake.
That's right. Burn a scorpion, burn some ants.
No. First, it's the scorpion fighting a bunch of ants, and then they burn it. Thank you very much.
Right, and so, the ants really don't make out very well in this whole scenario, by the way. You think that at least one of them would earn their freedom gladiator style, but no. They kill the scorpion and burn alive. So anyway, we are first introduced to Pike Bishop, who's played by William Holden, who is best known for Stalag 17 and Network, and his tumultuous relationship with area rugs.
You want to explain that?
As you pointed out, most of these guys were pretty heavy drinkers, and William Holden had a couple of things happen to him throughout his life. He killed a guy in an automobile accident, but he also died because he was drinking heavily, slipped on an area rug, split open his head, and bled to death.
Yes. Even though I'd seen William Holden and a couple of other things, I really didn't know who he was when he died. So all I really remembered initially about him is what I read in the papers is that, he tried drunk. He hit his head while he was drinking. Do you remember a show called Heart to Heart?
Yes.
All right, he was dating Stephanie Powers apparently at the time.
Interesting.
From Heart to Heart. And she was very obviously upset about his death. But he was a drinker. All these guys drank. And he was a heavy drinker. And ladies and gentlemen, if you hit your head and you can bleed out. So when you're bleeding and you're drunk, make sure you stop that. Otherwise, you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, it was actually funny. I was watching the film because there are a tremendous amount of scenes where they're drinking, a lot of scenes.
Yes.
And I wondered, because in most films, they're we're going to use water for vodka, right? Or tequila. And we're going to use, some other mixture for whiskey. I wondered the whole time if it was actually alcohol they were drinking.
I wouldn't be surprised. I know in old Hollywood, they would never do this today. But in the old days, I'm sure they brought on real whiskey on the set. I would not be shocked. I mean, these guys had no, what's the word I'm looking for here? They didn't have a lot of boundaries. Yeah. And so a lot of the stuff they were I'm acting here. Why not? Let's have a couple of drinks for lunch, and then we'll go back to the set.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, there was something called the 2-martini lunch. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, that people actually did. The executives would go out, and only executives obviously have to be upper class to get away with this. And you go get drunk at lunch and then go back to work. Yeah,
I mean, even as I was watching interactions between them and some of the women, I wondered to myself how much of this was scripted and how much of it was improvised just by the sheer look of terror on the women's faces. It was very uncomfortable to watch a lot of these scenes. So, especially it being from 1969, but I guess, as we're heading into sort of the 70s and, late 60s, early 70s, I think the sexual revolution was kind of at its height. So maybe not, but it was off-putting, I will say. So now we have Dutch Engstrom, who's played by Ernest Borgnine, who's best known for classics like Marty, From Here to Eternity, and, of course, Basketball.
the true classic.
The true classics.
What did you remember what he was in that? Did you actually see Basketball?
Yeah,
I don't remember him being in that at all.
No, but he was also in McHale's Navy, right?
Yes.
So because he was,
I did see. I saw some clips of the TV show, and I did see the movie when I was a kid.
Yeah, because he was actually a Navy dude, right? He was in the Navy.
I think so. I actually don't know.
So
I know he was married to Ethel Merman. That's me.
Was that the very quick marriage?
I think so, yeah.
That was the 32 days. I've already beaten him, if that's the case. If that's the marriage we're talking about. I'm pretty sure in his autobiography, he blamed Sinatra for breaking them up.
He blamed Sinatra for a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's true, too. So anyway, as the gang approaches the center of town, they dismount several of the horses that were definitely injured or killed during the making of this film. And a woman drops her Amazon packages, and our film's main character, Pike Bishop, helps pick them up.
Which I guess is supposed to, fool you? These guys seem perfectly fine. There's nothing going on in there. And you assume they're soldiers because you've never seen them before. The first introduction to them is them in their soldier outfit. So you think, these are these soldiers just coming into town.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a writer-director choice, right? Because At this point, they have said relatively no words, right?
No.
And you just see them sort of marching into town on horseback, and you do believe that, hey, these guys are in the military. They look legit. When this woman drops her packages, he's very, very helpful and picks them up for her and sends her on her way.
And also, I guess it's Borgnine's character who stares at the kids like, what are they doing over there with these?
Yeah, he was looking at the
bugs.
psychopaths, right? So our main characters continue their march towards the bank, where the first iconic scene of the film occurs. Guns drawn, they enter the bank, and Pike utters the most iconic line from the film.
If they move, kill them.
Which I was distracted, I'll be honest with you, the whole time, because I had to rewind it several times, because I thought there was a Starbucks outside. And
it's 1969.
I know it's 1969. I was like, that can't be a Starbucks. Apparently the town's name is Starbuck. And so there was, I think it says Starbuck Bank. But the whole time I was like, they're serving Frappuccinos out of there. I just know it.
I totally missed that.
At this point, it's very clear to the audience that these guys aren't military men. They are here to rob this place. It's also at this time we're introduced to Deke Thornton, played by Robert Ryan, who's probably best well known for the 23 minutes of this movie that he's in.
No.
I didn't know him from anything else, I'll be honest with you.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, keep going and I'll tell you a little bit about Robert Ryan.
We find out a little later that Deke is a former member of Pike's gang and has staged a setup to either kill or capture Pike, a detail I still don't fully understand in this film.
Yeah, it's a little confusing about what their relationship is, but we'll get to that at the end. As for Robert Ryan, I can tell you he's dead now, but he was in a lot of classics.
Okay.
One of which I remember was called Crossfire, and that is the first
with Tucker Carlson
film that. No, not that one. Not that Crossfire. He was in the first film that dealt with anti-Semitism.
Okay.
And it's the first
Tucker Carlson?
one of the first anyway. Not Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson did anti-Semitism. This film dealt with anti-Semitism. Different things.
That's very confusing. Yeah.
Yes. So that was like a 1947 film, which is very good. I saw it. I loved it. I saw it at Film Forum, which is in Manhattan, everybody. If you live in Manhattan, go to the Film Forum. There, Film Forum. I advertise for you. Please advertise on our podcast. Anyway, so it was the first B movie to get Oscar nominations. He got a Best Supporting Actor nomination. He was also in The Dirty Dozen, Bad Day at Black Rock. Two also very good films I enjoy, especially Bad Day at Black Rock. So if you take anything from this, if you want to see Robert Ryan's work, I would definitely recommend Crossfire and Bad Day at Black Rock.
Fine, he's been in stuff.
How can you? You see so many movies. How can you not know who Robert Ryan is? For shame.
I even looking at him, I could not picture him from anything. So yeah, I missed the whole Robert Ryan boat, I guess. So this is also where we meet Coffer, played by Strother Martin, and TC, played by L.Q. Jones, who are probably my favorite characters in this film. There are side characters. They, along with Deke and a dozen other folks, are watching the bank heist from a nearby rooftop, like cops from season 1 and 4 of The Wire, which I just finished last week.
I've never seen The Wire.
Yeah.
I know. Don't say it. Don't say it. I know. I got no excuse. I just have never seen it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I had not seen it until finished it last week. My wife and I, we spent probably, I think, 3 weeks binging it. I would recommend. It's always in that top 10 of best television shows of all time. And I was embarrassed not to have seen it. And there are 2 others on that list that I have not seen, which we are going to start binging soon, which would be The Sopranos, which I know is a big one, and I will get. Do you get hate mail?
Not yet. I'm hoping someday we're big enough to get hate mail.
Yeah, so this might spawn some hate mail. And the what's the other one about advertising?
Oh, Mad Men.
Mad Men. I have not seen that either.
I can join you on both of those. I've never seen a full episode of Sopranos, and I've never seen nothing. I've never seen anything of Mad Men.
So anyway, maybe it's because The Wire was so fresh in my mind, but it was just comical to me that they were so close. They were at the building literally next to the bank watching it. And I was like, how are you fools not going to be seen? And it's very similar in The Wire. The whole time they're watching these people deal drugs, and, how they're going to see you. You're on a rooftop, not really trying to hide yourself. So,
well, this is back in 1913. This is set. They didn't know. This is all new to them. Anyway, let me give you a quick background on some of the actors you just mentioned.
Okay.
Strother Martin. For this podcast, we've never seen him in anything, but I have seen him in Cool Hand Luke, True Grit, the original, Up in Smoke, the marijuana movie. Yes, I know. Don't ask me what he did in that. The End, the movie about where Burt Reynolds finds out he's dying, so he tries to commit suicide throughout the movie. And what's next? I remember being very funny. It came out in the 70s. Anyway, Rooster Cogburn. That's the John Ford movie. Sorry, not John Ford. John Wayne movie. I don't think John Ford directed it. I don't remember. Anyway, also seen him in... That's the name of the movie. It's a movie about what? Guess, Craig, what that movie's about.
It's the precursor to Snakes on a Plane.
Close, yes, but it's about snakes, yeah. I also seen him in The Sons of Katie Elder, which is another John Wayne movie. Kiss Me Deadly, which was the first Mike Hammer movie. Mike Hammer is the private eye who, the whole movie is him slapping people around to get information. Even the director thought he was a fascist. This is the first film with Cloris Leachman in it. You know what film it will remind you of if you saw Kiss Me Deadly? Is Pulp Fiction. Because Kiss Me Deadly has several scenes where they open up a case and there's a glowing light coming up into people's faces, but you don't see what's in the case.
Interesting.
That's where Tarantino got that from, was from Kiss Me Deadly.
Well, he also got some stuff apparently from this film. So,
oh yeah, Tarantino just steals everything. He's a joke thief of our filmmakers. I've also seen Strother Martin in The Big Knife, which weirdly enough is not a film noir. It's actually about Hollywood and an actor. There's no knife involved, although he does, well, something happens to him at the end. You'll see, if you see it, you'll find out. Anyway, also seen Strother Martin in The Red Badge of Courage and The Asphalt Jungle. For L.Q. Jones, I've seen him in A Boy and His Dog, and that should be a remake. They should remake that movie. That's a very good film. That was with Don Johnson. It's set in 2024, I think, which is hilarious. And it's this post-apocalyptic type film where this guy and his dog can read his mind and everyone else's mind. It's ridiculous, but I thought it was a really good film. He was also in Mother, Jug, and Speed. That is the early Bill Cosby movie where he actually curses. And pre-rapes, I guess, or maybe rapes during the film of that movie. I don't know. He doesn't do it on screen, that's for sure. And it also has Harvey Keitel. So it's a movie with Bill Cosby, Harvey Keitel, and Larry Hagman, if you can believe it. It's like, it is terrible, but I remember enjoying it as a kid. And that's it. All right, so let's back to the script. Okay. All right, I just want to give a little background on some of the people we were talking about.
Sure. And so let's head back to the robbery at hand. Deke was clearly tipped off about the robbery, and they're set up to spoil it. Except Angel spots the Wild Wild West SWAT team and alerts Pike before they enter the ambush. This is what sets up the first of many over-the-top gunfights in this film, and the use of gallons of ketchup. I think it's ketchup. It looks like the consistency of ketchup. I do want to point out that we're also introduced to one more character just for this one scene named Crazy Lee. And I only bring him up because he is the only gang member that doesn't leave the bank to escape during this whole thing. And his actions inside the bank are so wild. I'm sure that they do serve fodder for Tarantino's Spank Bank. Because at one point he just forces the hostages to sing to him for whatever reason. And then at another point he starts licking the inside of this woman's ear. It's all very, very bizarre.
I get the impression, because they do not tell them when they leave. They just leave and leave him there in the bank.
Well, they do tell him to hold it down and not to let them leave.
That's true.
Yeah.
But then they just leave themselves. They're like, hey, dude, come on out. Get on your horse. I got the impression that, like, fuck this guy. He's too crazy. Let's just leave him in the bank.
Yeah, it seemed like the guy you'd want to leave as you're trying to escape things.
Because they make no effort to find out, to get him back. They didn't make no effort to find out what happened to him. They're just like, he's let him stay there. you take care of this part of the robbery. We'll just take care of this part, and then screw you, buddy. We're out of here.
And later on, we do learn that he is the grandson of one of the other gang members, a detail that I'm sure he would have wanted to have prior to just leaving him there in the bank.
Well, the guy does say, well, I guess we'll get into him. The guy does say, like, hey, why did you tell me this is your grandson or whatever? And he said, well, he's got to play his part too, you know?
Screw loose.
Yeah.
So he just wanted to make sure he was doing a good job, which, you know,
yes,
it's a good granddad.
He did a good job, and now he's dead. So good job, Grandpa.
But this opening scene, it really does set up a lot of things. So, you know, we know that Pike and his gang of robbers have been betrayed by a former gang member, Deke in the railroad. Pike and the surviving members of his gang get out of town using the AA meeting that's happening right outside and using the temperance movement as a shield. And Coffer and TC get their first pair of many boots that they steal off dead guys in this film. And something I was anticipating it might be in this film. I was hoping for it. And when I heard it, it made me laugh. We heard our first Wilhelm scream at the 13-minute mark.
And what is the Wilhelm scream?
So it is a scream that when you hear it, you know it. It's been used in 400 plus films. It's a very distinct scream. And we can probably play it right now. Yeah, see, it's very distinct. So it was first used in 1951 in a movie called Distant Drums. And then it was picked up years later, I think in a film in 1954-ish, where that's where it actually got its name. The character was named Wilhelm, and he got shot with a arrow from a Native American and let out this particular scream. It really started to be used heavily in films when George Lucas got a hold of it and basically put it in all the Star Wars films.
Isn't it also used in A Star is Born?
Yes.
Where no one is even shot. Just in the background, you hear someone go, ah!
Yeah, it's a very fun sound effect. It's, you know, it's one of those things I had heard about years ago. And when you told me we were going to be watching this film, and the year was 1969, and it was a Western, I was like, you know what? There's a good chance they're going to use it in the film. And so my ears perked up. I didn't hear it any other times in the film. I'll have to go back, or I can look online to see if anyone else has pointed it out. But it's at about the 13-minute and 50-second mark. You hear it, and it's clear as day. And then the movie just sort of goes on.
I have to say, I totally missed that. It didn't even register with me.
Interesting. Like I said, it's one of those movie nuggets that once you know the history of something like that, you forever hear it. Just like I don't know if you know this one, it's ruined dozens of movies and TV shows for me now. The whole Apple thing, the characters.
I don't know what the Apple thing is.
So characters who use Apple products. There are two mandates that Apple has when using their products in a film. One, you have to show the Apple logo, so a phone can't have a case on it. You have to show the Apple logo. And the villain can never use an Apple product.
I didn't know this.
Yes.
I've never heard this.
Yeah, so when I've been watching Succession recently, I think I've figured it out already, based on that knowledge. So hopefully I haven't spoiled it for anybody else, but it was one of those like little nuggets of movie knowledge that I was like, oh, this is going to forever change the way I watch movies.
I never heard that. I had no idea that was a thing. Where they demand, like, hey, if you have this, you can have this prop in our movie, in your movie rather, but the villain can't use it.
The villain's using a droid, my friend. The villain is using a droid.
That is funny. I did not know that.
So anyway, Pike's gang is on the run. The surviving members, Pike, Dutch, Angel, Lyle, and Tector, they all have bounties.
You sound confused. You sound like you're not sure about that.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Is it Tector?
I mean, that's the other thing, too. The audio quality on some of these older films, you really have to kind of like listen to how they're pronouncing things. So yeah, that I threw a question mark out there. I'm not afraid to say it. I just want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. But anyway, all of them have bounties of $1,000 or more. It is interesting to note, though, that Pike, Dutch, and Tector are all wanted for murder and train robbery, while Lyle hasn't robbed any trains apparently, because he's only wanted for murder and rape. So these 4 single guys do whatever any single guy would do when they're on the run. They head to Mexico.
That's also probably where that originated, because if you remember, a bunch of films always, we got to go to Mexico if we committed a crime. Like apparently Americans go to Mexico, criminals, and they'll just let you stay there. Like, sure, you American criminals can come here and stay in our country. Absolutely. What do you care?
There certainly wasn't a glowing recommendation for Mexico. Also, wasn't a whole lot of wall built either at this point.
But this film was shot in 1913, so I can imagine that people probably did hide out in Mexico if you were American. I can see that. And just funny that we continue that today. We still have characters who commit crimes getting run off to Mexico, as if Mexico doesn't have law enforcement and won't totally send your ass back. Like, they don't want our criminals.
Yeah, Hollywood tends to do that for years past when it's appropriate, right? So, if you just think back to like the 80s and 90s, like every villain in an 80s and 90s movie was a Russian. And
that's true. Yeah.
And so, and now maybe again, I don't know. Who knows? So anyway, so after going through their, your typical Western terrain, they forge a river Oregon Trail style until they meet Freddie Sykes, played by Edmund O'Brien, in a small Mexican town. I've seen O'Brien in 1956's 1984, back in 1999, and I know that is all very, very confusing.
Well, let me give you a little background on Mr. Edmund O'Brien. For this podcast, we've seen him in nothing, but I have seen Edmund O'Brien in Lucky Luciano. I don't know if many people who listen to this remember, but in the early 70s, after Bonnie and Clyde was made and was a huge hit, suddenly Hollywood decided all gangsters from the 30s needed to have their own movie, and Lucky Luciano got his film. That's where Lucky Luciano came from. Then there was The Killers. I've seen that. I've seen him in White Heat. I probably know him best from DOA. Mm-hmm. That's the movie where the guy finds out he's dying, someone's poisoned him, and then he's got to figure out who poisoned him before he dies. Great film noir. I loved it. It was made in the 50s. And Up Periscope, which was a film, I believe. Huh?
Up Periscope, really?
Do you know Up Periscope?
Yeah.
That's with James Garner in.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So I have seen him before.
Okay.
All right, well, so now it's time to split the loot from the bank heist. Unfortunately for the gang, they find that there isn't any gold or silver in the bags. Instead, they're found enough washers to open up an entire aisle in the Home Depot. They are useless. They are pretty good-spirited about it, I would say. I don't know.
Well, they're really pissed at each other, at least initially.
Yes, and Angel does have that really good line, because initially they did, before they realize that they don't have any gold or silver in those bags, Lyle and Tector are pretty adamant that they don't want to split anything with Angel. And so they sort of like demand his share. And Angel kind of responds after the washers are found that, hey, you can have my share if you want.
Hey, gringo. You can have my silver.
Yeah, sure, you can have it. Absolutely. Listen, I've never robbed a bank, but back in the day, back in 1913, when this film is set, they didn't have the thing where you open it and the spray might hit you in the face.
Oh, like the dye packs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think they could have just taken a little peek and go, hey, what's in here? But I guess they were just so busy shooting everybody, which I don't know if we really established at the beginning, that they massacre a lot of people with the help of the sheriff's office and everything at the beginning of this film. So maybe they're too busy shooting everyone to really pay attention to what they had in the bags.
So we really should go back and actually talk about that opening scene, because there is quite a bit of death. This isn't on the top 15 most deaths in film, but I do think it cracks the top 20, maybe the top 30. There's 192 deaths in this film. For 1969, that was crazy high. But, there are a lot of innocent town folk in that opening scene who just get sprayed with bullets. And there is there are these two children who are sort of watching this whole thing unfold. The same kids who were burning ants and the scorpion moments before, and sort of like it's weird how they're sort of taking it all in. I'm really not sure what the director was trying to do there. Like, were the kids enjoying it, or were they terrified? It's very odd. It's an odd, off-putting scene.
I'm sure Peckinpah was really tempted to have the kids killed, but was afraid it would get him like a X rating or something. Yeah. They wouldn't be able to release it anywhere.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a bit off-putting because they're right in the middle of the melee, and none of them die. So just plenty of ants.
Well, that's earlier. Yes. They kill the ants. The kids themselves set the ants on fire.
They're killing ants as they're leaving town, too. Like, we open with killing ants, and then we continue to kill more ants as they're leaving.
Actually, I guess there's weren't those kids being shot? I guess.
Yes.
I guess after the shooting, they say, oh, I guess I'll go kill some more ants.
Yes. And it was just like, oh, this calms me.
Yeah, maybe that's it. This calms me down. Let me just burn some more ants. This whole massacre just witnesses too much from me.
Yeah.
I need to watch some ants burn to calm myself down.
It's very odd.
It's very soothing.
So anyway.
Do you think that's where the term fire ants came from?
No, I do not. But the gang, they sit there and they deliberate and they decide what they're going to do next. It was many members, one last score. They all sort of utter, I wish we hadn't got those washers because this was my last score. So most of these folks were done after this robbery, but not now because they were duped. So the only person who's really a realist in all of this is Dutch because, he just kind of knows better. And he basically tells Pike, he says, look, this is who we are. I don't know what you're thinking about this being the last score. We're going to basically keep doing this until we're both dead. So this is where we have our first flashback scene, and the reason why Deke and sort of turned on Pike. Again, I do not fully understand this whole relationship. It was apparently after a big score. Pike got careless and opened up their hotel door while they were celebrating a recent heist. And it sort of ended with Deke being shot and arrested. It's a very strange flashback, no doubt brought on by the non-stop drinking of these guys who have been pickled since the heist. So
here's the thing. So one of them gets captured. The cops come to get them because they're a bunch of bank robbers. One escapes and the other gets captured. And the captured one goes like, all right, I don't want to go back to jail. I will turn on my friends. And they go, okay, we will, for some reason, trust you enough to let you go out on your own. Well, he's with these other guys, but he keeps saying, I need better men. Because these other guys are a bunch of scavengers, basically, who steal things from the dead after they shoot up everything. And for some reason, the railroad who has hired him doesn't go like, hey, you're right, you need more qualified people. You need more professionals. They're like, take what you got. But yeah, I think that's the relationship. So he's sort of capturing them, but he doesn't want to. I think that's it.
Okay. That kind of makes sense. But as you're watching the film, it is not something that is fully interpreted, I think.
Well, we'll get to that at the end. But there's a whole thing like it's almost as if this is all planned before, which is like, where would that have come from? But we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Before we go further, we didn't mention what Angel's been in. That's Jamie Sanchez. Mm-hmm. And he has been in David and Lisa, a film from the 60s that I remember enjoying as a kid. And then I rewatched and go, this is terrible. But at the time, I thought it was very good. It's about these two people who are in a psychiatric institute who fall in love. And he was also in Serpico. Very good movie. We should put that on a list sometime. And Bad Lieutenant.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And we'd sort of talked about Bad Lieutenant before.
Yeah, someone else from this. This is also Bad Lieutenant. A lot of the films overlap. A lot of these people have been in the same films together.
Which makes sense, right? I mean, the same folks are going to work together for decades and decades. So
sure.
So anyway, so
they drink themselves to death after tripping on a rug.
So the gang ends up heading to Angel's hometown, where we're introduced to Don Jose, played by Cheno Urita. I don't know if I had seen him in anything of note, but he explains to Angel and Pike that the town has their own problems. They keep getting raided by the military and this General Mapache, who is played by Emilio Fernandez.
I'm not familiar with his work, and this podcast hasn't seen him in anything.
Yeah, he was a good character.
Yeah, he's great. Apparently he's a writer-director, but yeah, I've never seen any of his stuff.
So this is where we sort of get some more backstory and sort of motivation for the rest of the film. We learn that Mapache is responsible for the death of Angel's dad, and his girl has run off with the general as well. So if only they had some weapons to protect themselves from future raids in Mapache, they'd be able to protect themselves, right? So that's sort of the crux, right? But also, Mapache does sound like the title of a Tarantino film, doesn't it? Like, I'm surprised he just didn't lift it. completely. He basically changed it to Machete.
Apache. Well, Machete was his friend's movie, right? Richard Rodriguez?
Yeah, but didn't he wasn't that part of the whole Grindhouse era, right? And
Yeah.
But I think he may have produced it or had maybe a writing credit on it. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and check.
It's definitely something they both worked on with, because he and apparently the Richard Rodriguez are very good friends.
Right.
Maybe he likes Richard Rodriguez's feet.
He's got very.
Rodriguez has really sweet feet.
He's got nice feet.
Tarantino, I gotta be friends with this guy. Those are hot feet. Sorry, that's a editorial comment.
Not necessarily a wish list.
Yeah, I don't wish to see that, no.
Anyway, after a night in Angel's hometown, they are met with this really over-the-top and epic send-off. The whole village comes out for the gang to see them off, serenades them with songs and flowers, which made absolutely zero sense to me.
It made zero sense. Like, you don't know these people. Why are you even happy to see them?
Yeah, it's just very strange. Last time I left my hometown, my dad dropped me off at the bus station and said, call me when you get back to New York. No songs, no flowers, nothing.
Well, dude, come on. You're no gangster, for God's sake. You didn't rob stuff from a bank with a bunch of washers, for Christ's sake.
Promising to get guns for the town. Like a box of guns, by the way. Just
a box of guns. Yeah, a pretty big box, though.
So, anyway, they head off for another Mexican town to hide out from the bounty hunters. The town that they do end up in is free of gringos, but teeming with federales, including Mapache. We are first introduced to him as he sort of rides in on his, the only car in this film. And Pike kind of remarks that that's a car. And they were asking, what does it run on? And he says it runs on alcohol, which I'm pretty sure it's similar for Holden himself, that he just runs perpetually on alcohol.
Again, it's set in 1913, so cars are still relatively new. Airplanes are new. And that's part of the theme of the film is that these old gangsters, or rather these old gunslingers from the West, are dying out because now it's like we were entering the modern era and they're completely out of time.
Yeah, and even the characters are they kind of remark about, I heard that there's one that can fly, and they call him a liar, and Pike sort of chimes in. He's like, no. They do have some that got wings on them, and they go 60 miles an hour. So,
Yeah, the guy says, I forget which character says it, but yeah, he says, no, you idiot, that's a balloon. And they go, no, we actually have planes now, dude.
So anyway, they decide that they want to talk to the general about the car and some of the extra horses that they have left over from the robbery, because perhaps they can strike some sort of deal. And that's when we're introduced to Zamora, played by George Rusick. Zamora can only be described as Mexican Rob Schneider. He looks very similar to Rob Schneider. And the whole time, I just kept thinking that this is a very wild Adam Sandler film, and what will come out of this guy's face next?
Adam Sandler was, in 1969? He must have been like a child if he was even born yet. Weird comparison, but okay. By the way, we know this man from nothing. There was nothing. I couldn't find him anything. Anyway, he plays sort of like the general's right-hand man. And then also at this point where we find Teresa, played by Sonia Emilio. She is Angel's girl who sort of ran off with Mapache. And Angel sort of confronts her, and she chooses Mapache all over again, which sends him off the rails, and decides to open fire on her and calling her a whore, and shoots her dead in front of Mapache. Indeed. And this is tells you the level of women in this picture. Pretty much, they're there to be fucked and shot.
Yeah,
so they're either fucking somebody or they're getting shot.
Yeah, it's not,
or both.
It's not great for the women depicted in this film at all. So,
I mean, they're not so much women as they are walking vaginas.
Yeah, there are some very uncomfortable scenes coming up as well. So, but we'll get to that. So during this whole kerfuffle, one of Mapache's men, Moore, I think that's the only thing that we sort of get from him. It's strange. We don't really know what he kind of is. The financier of the army, maybe. But
is he the German guy?
Yeah, he's the German guy.
Yeah, that's as near as I can tell. Apparently, as soon as this is historical, I didn't look it up. I guess the Germans were funding the Mexican war against the rebels.
It was weird to hear sort of like the German voice all of a sudden, since, we've been drunk in Mexico for a number of hours at this point. And so anyway, Moore is played by Fernando Wagner. I don't know him from anything of note.
Neither do I.
But he notices that the gang has some weapons that are only really supposed to be used for the U.S. military. And so he wonders how Pike and his gang sort of got their hands on these weapons, and it would be nice if they would be able to get some for them, fall off the truck, train, wagon, whatever kind of thing. And so they come up with an agreement that Pike's gang will steal 16 boxes of military guns from a train in exchange for $10,000 in gold, and the release of Angel, because they're still kind of angry about the whole shooting Mapaches, one of them Mapache's girls in front of them. But first, everybody needs a bath. And what's really funny about this is, so about 25 minutes into this film, my wife turns to me and goes, "These folks need baths. They are filthy." And so she kind of...
She was right.
She was very right. And she sort of trailed off from watching it. And then when they said, "Oh, you all need a bath," I brought her back out into the living room, and I said, "They're getting a bath." So this actually brings us to kind of like the wildest part of the film.
You think this is the wildest part?
For a number of reasons, because I don't really see a whole lot of value in the scenes that are coming. They're all very strange, and they don't really sort of necessarily set up a whole lot for this film. I could be wrong. No. Maybe you'll be able to chime in, but...
Well, they definitely did not set up the rest of this film. No, it's a complete just detour from what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it was just, but all of them wildly weird. So, the Gorch brothers head off with 3 Mexican prostitutes to a winery where they proceed to just shoot barrels of wine and bathe in the wine.
Was that wine they were bathing in? I thought that was water.
No.
It was actually wine?
That was wine. They were bathing in wine.
Oh, okay.
And this happens. This is happening while the rest of the gang is actually having a proper bath in some Mexican bathhouse. During bath time, Angel and Pike strike a deal that Angel can have one of the boxes of guns and ammo for his town, so he can sort of protect themselves from the general in the future. Angel didn't want to steal for the general, but he agrees to it basically for the town's sake. And it's also where we have the first, we have our next flashback for Pike, where we learn a little bit more about his past. We learn that when he was younger, Pike was sleeping with a taken woman. The husband sort of walked in on them in the middle of the act and shot and killed her, wounded him, which is why he's got this weird, gunshot wound on his leg. And honestly, I really don't know what the whole point of that backstory was, other than to maybe sort of help with the empathy for Angel and what he's going through, because there are some similarities there.
I don't know. The women here are really not fully developed, so we don't know what they're about other than they get shot and the guy, I have to take revenge, you shot my woman and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The film could have been exactly the way it was without having the whole, backstory of, the woman he was with was shot and she was married and the husband came and shot her. It doesn't develop the character or the story at all.
Especially since, he does sort of talk about like, I never, he ran out and I never caught him and I've been looking for him ever since. And it's just like, well, when? Like,
yeah, when do you have time?
When did
you've been robbing banks.
Robbing trains and banks. Like, so, it's a bit like OJ looking for the killers, right?
The subtext in all this is that the women are the men's property. The women have no rights at all. It's just so the guy's like, oh, you're with me. I own you now. Oh, he killed you. And I got to find the killer of you because you were my property. And just like, the whole thing is sexist as hell, even for 1969.
And like I said, if you watch carefully some of the scenes, especially in this part with the sort of like the prostitutes and stuff, it's uncomfortable to watch because I truly do not know if any of this was scripted. It seems like a lot of ad-libbing, and it didn't look like it was necessarily consensual in a lot of these scenes.
Oh, geez, I don't know about that. Clearly, the film, it's still early in film, so nudity is still a relatively new thing. New for,
mainstream.
For film.
Yeah.
Mainstream films, yeah, good point. Yeah, mainstream films really didn't have that much nudity, so they have some nudity, but of course, what's the nudity? All the nudity really is the women. You don't see any of the guys' bodies other than their shirts off. Even when they're taking a bath, you don't see anything. So to make sure it's clear who this film is directed towards.
Yeah, even in the bathhouse, like Ernest Borgnine's in like full leggings, like he's
Yes, like what bath are you taking?
and they had a lot of nerve calling it a bath. It was more of a steam. It was
more a steam.
Yeah, it was a schwitz, and just the old Wild West schwitz. So,
but even with the steam again, they're not wearing towels. You're right; they're wearing like full leggings and stuff.
Yeah, it was very odd.
What's the point of this then? Not that I want to see any part of Ernest Borgnine, but I mean, come on.
Get a little peek of Mikhail's Navy, if you know what I mean. So, anyway, none of the scenes at this point, like, really, to me, added to any of the film. Like, it didn't push the story any. They didn't need to happen. And so now, it's time for the big train robbery. And that scene sort of begins with all the Wild Bunch members, again, led by Pike, preparing the robbery as sort of the trains approach. They have a carefully planned strategy here to intercept the train, seize the guns and ammunition. The gang members are positioned in various points along the train tracks, ready to strike at any moment. When the moment is right, they're just waiting for Pike to give the okay. And they also smell great because they've all bathed recently, so they got that going for them. So the train draws closer, tension builds, the gang members silently waiting for Pike's signal to initiate the heist, and then Pike gives that signal, and the whole gang sort of springs into action. Dutch and the others use dynamite to sort of blow up sections of the track. They force the train to come to a sudden halt, which, in all movies, trains, inevitably, they come to a sudden halt. Doesn't matter the film. With the train stopped, the gang quickly boards it. They take control of all the cars containing weapons.
It's a good thing they had to know which car actually has the weapons in it.
Well, it was easy to...
At some point, I mean, maybe you can explain this to me, but they seem to know an awful lot that I don't know how they could know.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. If you look closely, the guns and ammo are not in a covered car, and on the outside of the boxes, it says... guns and ammo.
Does it? I don't remember seeing that.
It does. And I was like, oh, well, they're not hiding this at all.
Well, I guess that does make it easier.
Yeah. Oh, what's in the boxes, you think? Probably guns and ammo.
Although it would be fun if they opened it and it was just more washers. It's like, fuck, they got us again!
Yeah. They just sort of play that old music. Anyway, so the train stops, the gang boards, they grab all the cars sort of like containing the weapons, they subdue the guards, and they get out of there with all of the guns and ammo with some waiting horses. However, I guess Deke somehow anticipated that this heist was going to happen on the railroad somewhere, and the army there also has a train car like that's full of horses, and so they go on full pursuit. And this sort of all continues as the bounty hunters sort of get involved and start chasing after them. At one point, Pike sends the train backwards, which was kind of fun and neat to watch. It heads careening towards the cars that didn't come with them when they stole the train. And they start heading back into Mexico, and they're heading over this bridge that they have sort of laced with dynamite everywhere. And then we get into this are they going to make it kind of scene, right? The wagon wheel gets stuck on the bridge, and we don't know. They're trying, the fuse is already lit, tension is building, and somehow they muster the strength to push the wagon and get it off the bridge and blow it just in time to send Deke, his crew, and all his horses, Oregon Trail style, forging the river by themselves. And we see
right into the river. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a pretty good scene, to be honest with you. I thought they executed very well.
I thought in terms of pacing and tension and all the good stuff that you'd want to see in this style of film, it was probably the best scene of all of them.
And also, I really liked when, I guess it's Deke, he's looking for he's figured out, hey, something's wrong with the train. These guys are supposed to be robbing it. And he's trying to figure out who he can take with him to confront the guys. And he's looking at these soldiers. Some of them are really young.
Yeah.
And they look like kids. I mean, I guess they're literally children staring up at him and smiling.
They look
like, God.
Most of them look like they were just burning ants.
Maybe they were. Maybe they were just burning ants and now they put them in the army.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the best scene for me in the film. And also because, we learn early on that the whole reason why they're trying to capture these guys is because they've robbed trains. And so you want to see someone do what they're good at, right? And they're good at robbing trains. So
yeah, it would be weird if it was a movie about train robbers and you never see them actually rob a train. Yeah, would have been odd.
So following the train robbery scene, the Wild Bunch gang sort of delivers the stolen weapons to General Machache in exchange for the gold. There's some back and forth here. They don't fully trust each other. They kind of deliver it in dribs and drabs. And so that sort of builds, I think, a little bit more tension with with both gangs, right? Between, the Wild Bunch and the Mexican army.
Right.
And Mapache himself. It sort of continues to escalate, mostly because I think that General Machache and Mexican Rob Schneider really don't trust Angel all that much still.
Well, they definitely, I guess you'll get into it, but they want to hold him. They decide, hey, he's ours.
Yeah. So this was something I think that Pike was trying to avoid, but inevitably, he had made the promise in the bathhouse, hey, okay, do this job with us and we'll give you 1 box of ammunition and 1 box of guns for you to take back to your town. But he kind of goes back on that. Like he doesn't want him to do it. And Angel sort of attempts to take the crate of guns and, for his village, and all hell breaks loose. Angel takes the guns away, only to get sort of caught by Mapache's men, and this leads to Angel being captured and tortured with the worst car ride ever.
Yeah, so they drag him at the end of the car. But before all that, I mean, you're right, there was sort of this thing, because initially, I guess, maybe Pike was going to go back on it, because they have this whole thing where Angel has a bunch of rebels suddenly joining him. And that's how come he gets these weapons, even though maybe Pike didn't want to take them. But that's how he gets them, is because he has backup out of nowhere. We don't know where these people came from.
Yeah, it all escalates very, very quickly in sort of like the last couple of minutes of the film. And, again, I don't fully understand, why Pike... He definitely agrees with Angel, right? Like, he wants him to have, like, first of all, he doesn't want him to die. He doesn't want him being dragged around by the car for an hour. But it isn't entirely clear if he's, like, fully upset about it at this point or not.
Well, I think the idea is that he considers Angel part of their gang, and so he doesn't want that to happen to him. Anything after that, he doesn't care, but right now he's part of our group, so we just can't let anybody do anything they want to him.
Yeah, they do touch on that, like, throughout the film. It's all about, hey, get on board with the gang. No one's against, any member of the gang. It's this is a team. You know what I mean? Like, he's a big cheerleader for this gang.
Well, yeah, the idea is like, hey, you agreed to be part of us. If you're part of us, that means we protect you, and once you leave, then you're out of the group. But as long as you're in the group, we're going to look out for you.
So all while this is going on, Deke and his posse continue to pursue the gang. They follow the gang's trail to the Mexican border, where they witness the aftermath of the train robbery and all that chaos. And then we get to sort of like the final scene, often referred to as the Battle of Bloody Porch, where Pike and the remaining members of the gang decide to rescue Angel from Mapache. They said, basically, he says, he's one of us. We're going to have to go and get him. We're going to get him back. Despite them sort of being overwhelming odds, it's just the 4 of them. And, since they also just gave the Mexican army a bunch of guns and a machine gun. I forgot to mention this. Did I mention that at one point...
They don't know how to use the machine gun?
They don't know how to use the machine, but Pike gives them the machine gun as a gift. It was one of the things that he sort of found on the train. He's like, you know what? We're going to throw in the machine gun as well. No extra money. It's a gift for you. It's kind of this weird NRA Secret Santa. He just gives him a machine gun.
Right, and then with the machine gun, we have a whole scene with them trying to figure out how it works, and they just wind up shooting. I don't know if they ever actually hit anybody, but everybody's running out of the way not to get shot.
Yeah, it was like watching a squirrel get a hold of a gun. It was just like, what? They can't control it. They shot a bunch of people. So anyway, they march into Mapache's camp and they demand Angel's release, and that just leads to just this brutal, bloody, chaotic scene with tons of gifted machine gun action.
Well, the thing is, okay, so they go like, okay, listen, we want Angel back. You know, we gave you everything you wanted. Let's just have back our guy. And he says, oh, you want him back? Sure. And then they bring Angel up, who's been dragged. Yeah. So he's all bloody from just being dragged by the car. Picks him up there, here you want back, and then slices the guy's throat.
Yeah, so, so there's that. But also, when they had asked for him earlier, because they had previously asked for him back, I think it was one of the general's sort of sidekicks there, was like, I don't know if you really want him. I don't think he's going to live much longer.
That's true.
He looks like he's on his way out, and maybe you shouldn't offer such a big price for it, because he's basically toast. So, but yeah, there's this bloody scene after that, after Angel sort of gets his throat cut, and you kind of start to think, oh, okay, no one's gonna make it out of here alive. And then, Pike kind of he gets taken out, and it's funny because he's not taken out by like the general or one of the.
Well, they shoot the general,
right?
That's the first person they shoot.
That's the first person.
In fact, he's the one who slits Angel's throat. Yeah.
Right.
He slits Angel's throat, and they go, oh, okay. And then they just pull out the gun to shoot him up. Well, there's a pause as everybody's
like, there's a long pause.
Did you just do? Yeah,
there's a long pause because people are trying to figure out, oh, well, who's in charge? It's like when your boss doesn't show up for work. It's just like, do we do anything? So,
and then they all start shooting.
Yeah, they all start shooting, and Pike ends up getting shot by a young kid.
That's right. Although you remember during the shootout there, he also gets shot by a lady who he calls the Spanish word for bitch.
That's right.
Which is also someone else also uses that. I guess Angel also uses it for the woman he shoots. So that's a popular word there. And she shoots him. The only time a woman actually has any action in this, and he turns around and shoots her, because apparently she can only shoot him in the shoulder, even though she has his entire back to aim at. Somehow she only hits his shoulder.
Yes, that's right. It's like I said, his demise is pretty sad, right?
Well, they all get ripped apart by bullets, which is, I'm sure, completely a ripoff of Bonnie and Clyde, because I think that came out before this, where they're just like, everyone, Borgnine, Holden, the two brothers, all that, bam, bam, bam. This is like ketchup all over their shirts.
So, it was like Mar-a-Lago.
Mike Mar-a-Lago, what? Oh, because he likes to throw ketchup. That's right, I forgot.
So, meanwhile, while all of this is sort of going on, Deke Thornton arrives with his posse just as sort of the battle comes to the end. He sees the brutal aftermath of this, and then I guess he has like a sense of loss, right? He's sad at...
Well, this was his friends. He was a...
Yeah, but he also turned on his friend. He was after his friend to So, again, this is why I don't understand...
Very, very half-assedly, you must admit. I mean, he wasn't really breaking his neck to capture them.
No, but we also don't, set up a strong enough relationship earlier on with just the sort of the one flashback about...
Right, you get that one scene.
Yeah, so that, again, that's why I don't understand this relationship. I did not watch the director's cut of this, which I don't know if there are any more scenes that sort of paint a better picture of this relationship, but you do get this sense that he was, that he's sad that Pike is dead, and he kind of just decides to turn his back on his own posse, and honor the friendship that he had with Pike. No words on who got the machine gun, but I'm guessing it was Coffer and TC when they were done hauling boots off of dead bodies. But that's kind of how the film ends, It's kind of a bit of a whimper.
Well, I mean, it ends with him. First, he takes Pike's gun, because I guess it's a memento, and he sees his dead friend, and then just sits there outside of, whatever that little thing that all the soldiers are in. I guess, a fort. I don't know. But he's sitting outside, and then the other characters we've seen earlier, who they were hanging out when they were hiding in the Mexican village, show up, and they go like, hey, we're a new gang. Would you like to join us? And he goes like, yeah. Well, and he also sends his posse. After they strip everyone else of their weapons and stuff and their clothing, they even take some of the bodies so they can take them back as so they can get a reward for them. And then in the dialogue, it says, oh, those guys, we killed them all. So would you like to join us? And he goes, yeah, sure, why not? And then that's how it ends.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I feel a little disappointed by this ending only because there's a lot of emotion there without a whole lot of backstory between these two.
So does that mean for you it does not work?
It's not that it doesn't work. I think that, I also kind of put it in the context of, what the filmmakers had at their disposal. This is a very long film for 1969 too, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Relatively so. And especially for, I think, a Western. So I think it still works, but there are elements that I think in today's modern motion picture era, we would have done some things to make this a little bit better, to bring this all together.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a modern era, you definitely would flesh out the women. They wouldn't just be background. I agree with you. We would have a better idea of what the relationship is between all the dudes there, especially the two main antagonists, the Pike and whatever his name is, the guy who's the bounty hunter for him, the main bounty hunter. Overall, though, I guess it works well enough. I certainly would recommend it for anyone who wants to know where the foundations of a lot of tropes we have today came from. It's sort of like I feel about this film the same way I felt about Dirty Harry that I reviewed with George. And that even though I didn't necessarily like the film, I think people should watch it if they're curious where this all started, the whole rogue cop thing. That's all those tropes you'll find in Dirty Harry. And a lot of tropes about, guys shooting up the place, the men with honor sort of thing, and I'm too old for this stuff. That you can find in The Wild Bunch. That establishes so much of films, and a lot of films.
Yeah, no, it definitely, you do see where filmmakers pulled from this, right? Like there's a lot of meat here for them to pull from. And that's the only reason why I would say, yeah, this still works, because there are elements of this film that are still used today. I just think that this might not have been the way that I would necessarily like to see everything put together. Also, admittedly, Westerns are not necessarily my favorite genre. And if we're talking about Westerns in general, this does not crack the top 10 for me of Westerns.
Really? What's your favorite Western? Do you know?
Well, so again, my dad is of the Gunsmoke era, so he still watches Gunsmoke. And so a lot of the old Westerns that I've seen have been with him, none that necessarily sort of come to mind off the top of my head, but I like sort of like the modern ones. I really got into film probably back in 1990 when I started to watch lots and lots of films, and so Unforgiven goes down as sort of one of my favorites of all time.
Okay,
which I know is a bit of a cop out because it's really recent in terms of Westerns. But it has everything that I like from the genre.
Before we started recording, you were asking me about whether this was the end of cowboys and Indians type of genre, of Western genre. And I should say, for anyone who might be curious, it definitely was not. There was a whole slew of Westerns after this, some of them completely ripping this off, obviously, because it was a hit. So, Hollywood, if that's a hit, then we're all going to do it.
Yeah.
What finally killed the Western was the blockbusters like first Jaws, I believe Jaws came first, and then Star Wars. That's when suddenly Westerns people were like, I don't want to see this. Somebody said something, either set in modern day or in the whatever, like in space. But there were a lot of Westerns in the 70s, and then the genre died out, which I keep comparing this to superhero movies. I think superhero movies are going to be just like the Western. Tons of them, just one after the other, and then one day something else is going to come along, and people are just going to get tired of it, and that's going to kill off the superhero movies. There might be one or two after it, but nothing like it is now.
Yeah,
I think Western is the same.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on that. I also think, not for nothing, it's the use of horses. I think that has a lot to do with it too. I can't remember. There was a show not too long ago.
You're thinking of the Dustin Hoffman show?
Yes, the Dustin Hoffman show. Working with horses is very, very difficult. I guess now you could probably CGI a lot of it, but having horses in film is a very, very difficult task now. And back then, they were set up for it. Like, they literally had, like, that was part of Hollywood.
I didn't check. I don't know if you saw in the credits whether they said no animals are harmed in the filming of this. I doubt that was there. Whereas you would have that now, like, you can't get away with.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they would treat animals, well, they would treat the actors horribly, so of course they would treat the... Why would they care about the horses? When they, if you know, like in early Hollywood, they used live ammunition. They didn't have fake guns, like real guns shooting at each other. So of course they didn't give a damn about the horses.
Yeah, and I also think too that from a dialogue perspective, like it's these films are a little bit harder because to engage an audience now, it seems like you need explosions every 5 or 6 seconds and lots of dialogue. And there are stretches in these types of films where you go 5 minutes without anybody saying anything, which makes younger people uncomfortable.
It's funny you should say that because we had that same problem in Dirty Harry. There's a scene where Clint Eastwood is rising on this cherry picker because he needs to look into this window of a suspect or whatever. And it's about 2 minutes, maybe even 1 minute of just complete silence as he's being lifted up. You're like, there's no music, there's no dialogue, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And we're just looking at this going like, what? It is weird. It feels really weird to see that sort of thing.
But
in today's movies, you got to at least have music playing.
Right, you have to have something. You have to have something going on. Although, so sort of like the caveat to that is something like John Wick 4, which just came out, and I think he made like $400,000 a line. He doesn't have very many lines in it at all. There's not a whole lot of talking at all in the film, but there are gunfights and explosions every 2 seconds, just nonstop.
Tons of action, yeah.
So I think that's part of it too, like not being able to, when you're just 2 guys on a horse going through the desert, there's there's only so much action that can be manufactured, and there's only so much dialogue that can happen as well as they're heading toward the next town. So I think that's another reason why they don't do these types of films anymore.
Yeah, and also, I mean, do people really want to see a film about a bunch of old guys on their horses, mostly men, just, I don't know, shooting up people? Like,
Yeah.
I just don't think that plays as well anymore. I can see in 1969 it was something new, because normally the film would be, the good guy would never, like, have you ever seen Casablanca?
Yes, yeah.
If you remember, in Casablanca, when Rick is confronted by the head Nazi guy has to shoot first.
Right.
Before Rick can shoot. Even though this guy's a Nazi, they still have to shoot first before Rick can shoot him.
Right.
And this picture, this is the first time in the film where it didn't matter you're shooting them or not, they're shooting you. So, especially a guy like William Holden or even Edmund O'Brien, like the guys who usually play relatively good dudes. In this film, they're terrible people. There is no good person in this entire film. Even Angel, ostensibly there to help his people, is an asshole.
Yeah. I mean, he murders the girl that didn't want to be with him. So
yeah, which is definitely a-hole behavior, I would say.
Yeah, it's.
Hey, listeners, I get to say something this episode anyway. So they're about to say that the next episode is a Patron's Choice episode, and that is true, but before that is one of the weeks where we don't release one because it has 5 Wednesdays, and we use those weeks to try and get ahead so we can take time off when we have to. So, yes, a Patron's Choice episode will release on June 7th, but May 31st, there will not be an episode.
All right, my friend, I guess that's it. Our next episode is a Patron's Choice, and we don't know what the movie will be because our patrons vote on them, and that vote hasn't been finalized yet. If you want to vote, but are not a patron, you can fix that by becoming one at patreon.com/DTSWpod. And even our friend here, Kraig. Kraig, you're a patron.
That is true. I donate monthly.
You never vote on the damn movies, but you're a patron.
I respectfully abstain.
We need your vote, damn it.
Yes, and I will at times get messages from you saying, please vote, we need you to break a tie. And I love being the tie-breaking vote.
Happens a lot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Kraig Beaudoin, sitting in for George Ramaka, who may or may not be in Joe's basement.
Well, right now he's not in my basement, but hopefully we'll fix that.
This was fun.
This was fun. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, with a handful of holes, a thumb up your ass, and a big grin to pass the time of day with.
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Ramaka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
Who played Bad Lieutenant? Mean Streets. He's a Scorsese actor.
Oh,
Not De Niro, the other one.
not Pacino.
Not Pacino. He's not De Niro. He's not.
No, not Ray Liotta.
No. What is some Martin Scorsese actors besides De Niro? Who else does he usually work with? That's the other guy.
Bad Lieutenant. That's yeah, I know him. Harvey Keitel.
Is there any book that hasn't been made into a movie that you would like to see on the big screen? All right, my friend, what movie did you used to love that you now hate?
One question for you. Is there a film that maybe it's mediocre, but if you could recast it with a couple of actors, does it move from a 5 to a 9 or a 10 film in your eyes?